Hello everybody, welcome back to Max Reviews, and after 5 months, 15 favorite movie from each year I've been alive videos, 5 random review videos, 1 Valentine's Day themed favorite movie from each year I've been alive video, and watching 22 movies, it's time for my ranking of my favorite movie from each year from the past 50 years. Been working on this video for 5 months. Thank you for everybody for being on this journey. Let's finally do this. 1972, we're going to be going with The Godfather. This is one of the best crime movies ever, where you have this entire crime family and seeing how they function, seeing how all the crime underworld works with the Godfather and actually having this relationship. I'm not as into this movie as a whole bunch of people are, but I really do enjoy it. It's a solid 4 stars for me. It's got some very, very good performances in here, and I like how it ends. It's a bit dated, even though it's 50 years old this year. Hard to believe, but it still holds up. I think just the idea works very well, and even in this trilogy of films, it stands out as my favorite. I just watched this movie last year, and I understand why people are big into it. It's one of those movies that I'm not into as much as other people, much like The Matrix and this movie, obviously, and also Halloween, which we'll see later on this list, but still a very solid movie. I enjoy everything that's going on here, even though some of it isn't exactly like what would seem intriguing. It still works out and is intriguing, and it's a very, very good movie. 1973, we're going with American Graffiti. I really had seen no movies for 1973, so I was going to check out The Exorcist, and then I'm like, hey, you know what, I'll check out American Graffiti. It's directed by George Lucas. It's his first film. It's his debut film, and it is fine. It's got a young Harrison Ford in there, and it's basically people just driving around this town all night, and it's just this one night. It works very well as that. It's got a bunch of different characters. Very interesting movie, how it actually could keep you slightly intrigued while also just being people driving around at night. It's got different plot lines going on, but it doesn't conclude in an epic finale. But this was seriously the only movie that I checked out for 1973, so I had to choose this, or else I'd watch The Exorcist, which I'm going to wait a little bit before I check that one out, just not as interested. But this movie, it could have been a lot worse. It had quite a few sort of interesting elements. I'm still going a bit positive on it for my final score. It's a very sort of different movie, and you could still see a bit of George Lucas's style in there. He doesn't have an excellent style, but he's got fairly interesting style with some of the things that go on and some of the camera work. So fairly interesting movie, but it was the only movie that I'd seen 1973, so I'm a bit biased. 1974, we're going with The Godfather Part 2, and this movie seems, for me, even longer than the first Godfather. You have these flashbacks that are going on with the dad, the actual Godfather, and then you also have our modern-day Godfather taking care of his family and working out this crime world. I think I'm more interested in the back in time original Godfather thing going on, because it's a lot more just intriguing to me, and I enjoy it because our Godfather, the one, like our main character from the first movie, he's like losing his wife and kids with everything that he's going on, and he's got to sort of protect them while also taking care of all this crime stuff. So very interesting movie. These Godfather movies aren't really ones that I'd rewatch too often, but they are absolutely very, very good movies. You have, once again, a great performance from the main guy in this, and even though it's a longer movie, it's not exactly my exact sort of movie that I'm looking for. I like more blockbusters. This movie still, it just holds up as a movie and as a film, with everything that happens, with the plot to the characters to just little details. It works very well, and that's why I enjoy it. 1975, best movie that I've talked about so far, we have Jaws. I love this movie. This is, I think, the earliest movie that I could think of that's just a 10 out of 10, and this is perfect. I just checked it out for this ranking, and so it's such an amazing movie. The score by John Williams is perfect for this movie. The characters you care about so much, even though like they're not played by giant movie stars, you really love the characters. And the creepiest moment is when they're just safe in a boat talking, and it's so creepy, and you love it that they could have that with a movie. It's easily one of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies. It might be my favorite Steven Spielberg movie. I love just the effects, the practical effects for the actual shark, how large it is, how they just do so much in this movie, how it looks, how it feels, the creepiness, and you know that they actually will kill characters and stuff when you hear that music, so it gets even more under your skin. It's such a well-directed movie with just, once again, amazing cast. The best movie that I've talked about, even though I'm not huge on The Godfather, this movie is 100% just perfect. If I had to think about a perfect movie, I think Back to the Future and Jaws. They're done so well. You have these different parts and different acts when they're on the boat, when people are disappearing, the middle act where they're trying to figure everything out, and you got the shark and you're trying to figure out, was that the right shark that they got? And just so good. It also has just some interesting scares and very, very good effects that I think still hold up. So Jaws is absolutely a classic and one of my favorite movies on this list. 1976 is Rocky, Sylvester Stallone movie that put him on the map, and it absolutely holds up as it's come out with this giant, they're coming out with the 9th continuation of this giant Rocky franchise, and it's still, the first Rocky movie is still the best, with just the music, just Sylvester Stallone's performance, Adrian, the actual boxing fight, the underdog nature. This is my favorite sports movie of all time, and I don't think it will ever be topped. Even though I really do enjoy the Creed movies, this one is just so perfect. I love how just the entire cast, just everybody in here is great. Paul Lee and also Apollo Creed, they're just done so well. The little lines of dialogue. I've seen this movie so many times, and every single time it still holds up. It still ends on the perfect note. And this movie that is almost 50 years old, it's 47 years old, and we're getting Creed 3 in December. That's just crazy to me that this movie could have that long of a stretch, and the movies are still so good. I love Rocky. This is easily just best sports movie. I love every aspect of it. It's just done so well with these characters, with this fight, with this boxing match, and I just love it so much. 1977, we had the movie that started it all with me, Star Wars, retitled Star Wars A New Hope, but just Star Wars. This is the movie that got me into movies. This is the first blockbuster I saw. This is the first big movie that I'm like, wow, movies could be more than just like kids' movies. This is actually perfect. So everything has been burned into my memory. Every Star Wars movie, the first 6 I watched on loop, but the first one, the old VHS tape, I still have it right on my shelf. That started my love for movies. This movie still holds up. The effects are so perfect. They were so ahead of their time. The plot, Star Wars just in general, the characters, everything is so classic. I haven't rewatched it in a while, but this is easily one of my favorite movies of all time. Star Wars means so much to me, and I used to be a giant Star Wars nerd. Like, if you look around in my room, I have so much Star Wars stuff. Every single Lego set I have is Star Wars. I have like 15 lightsabers. I love Star Wars so much, and it all comes back to this original movie where just Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, just everybody, everything. It's so perfect. A classic hero's journey with Luke Skywalker. And this movie is probably the movie that means the most to me, as this is the movie that made me just get into movies, and I just love it so much for that, and still just on its own terms, it's such a perfect movie. 1978, we have Halloween, the original. There was 2 movies this year that I was going to check out, Halloween and Grease, and I watched Halloween, I'm like, that was not as good as I thought it would be. I'm sorry, people, all giant Halloween fans, I know it's a classic. And then I started Grease, and I'm like, nope, this is not going to top Halloween. So, Halloween, I need to give it a rewatch, even though I watched it like 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. And I could understand they didn't have great effects or anything, but you don't need to have great effects. They have it that Michael Myers doesn't really have a reason for murdering everybody on the block. And that could work, but for me, immediately, it just doesn't. But I'm sort of grown to, like, okay, well, he doesn't really have motivation. The kills, solid enough. Michael Myers, fairly creepy. I want to check out the rest. I'm going to rank them all whenever Halloween comes around and the new one comes out. So, there's so many Halloween movies, so the first one I'll probably praise so much in my ranking whenever I watch them all, because there's so many sequels. But the first one, I could understand why it's a classic of the genre. It's basically the first actual horror slasher movie, and I enjoy it. It's fairly brutal and has some pretty good scenes, but it's just not my really favorite thing when you have the main killer and they're just like, okay, we're not going to show him. Oh, wait, did you see him? No, you didn't. So just, I still enjoy it, but not as good as I wanted it to be. 1979, we have Alien. This is a movie that genuinely freaked me out first time I watched it, which was just a few weeks ago, and amazing movie. It's a great sci-fi horror movie that the effects, once again, like Star Wars, is reminded me so much of Star Wars. These 1970 effects, yikes, practical, but they reminded me of Star Wars. It's such a good horror movie that could still be creepy almost 50 years later. Well, probably not 50 by now, 40 years later, 43, I think, something like that, but just such a good movie that it's better than Halloween. It's better than The Godfather, American Graffiti, and The Godfather. But as we move up, the movies start getting better and better. Alien is just, it's such a good horror movie. It's such a good sci-fi movie. It's genuinely creepy. The effects look so cool. The alien is so just terrifying because it is just this one alien, but it just gives this sense of terror, and you actually care about a character, and then you also have, like, robots going on. It's just so creepy and crazy at the same time. I just loved it so much, and the reason why I like Aliens better is because it has more of the guns. This movie is very self-contained, and I can really appreciate that. Even though I prefer the bigger action movie, this is still a very, very good movie. 1980, kicking off the 80s, is Empire Strikes Back. Everybody says that this is the best one. For Star Wars movies, it's just this or A New Hope for me. It's so hard to figure it out, but I don't know. I'd have to do a rewatch and re-rank them all. But Empire Strikes Back is still, like all the Star Wars movies, are 10 out of 10. The first trilogy is perfect, in my opinion. Empire Strikes Back, once again, I watched it, and I was blown away how good the Star Wars movies can get. I love just not the Emperor's revealed, but that Vader is Luke's father. Like, I didn't know that in general, and it's just so cool. Vader in this movie is so good. He's brutal. I always felt that this is where the movie got a bit darker, Empire Strikes Back, and Yoda's introduced, which you don't usually think, but it's so classic Yoda. And you have Lando, you have all these great characters. Boba Fett's debut in live action. And I just love all the little details, the fight, the romance, everything in this movie is done so well. Another excellent movie that I love Star Wars, and the AT-ATs or AT-ATs, whatever you want to call them, look so good. All the effects, so good. I just love this movie so much. Everybody says it's like the greatest sequel of all time. For me, Star Wars and Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back are like on the same level for me, that they are just so perfect, and I love them both so much. Everything in this movie, it just means so much to me. It's such an amazing movie. 1981, we have Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I actually checked this movie out like 5 years ago when I was like a little kid. Maybe, might have been 7 years ago, something like that. But it just terrified me. The guy's face is melting off. Like, this is PG, Dad? Really? And I would say this movie is like the classic Indiana Jones, classic adventure movie. I love like the rock rolling down, and just rewatching it, I remembered all of it. The Nazis, the snake pit, I hate snakes, the Ark of the Covenant. It's just done so well. Indiana Jones is played to perfection by Harrison Ford. This is my second favorite Harrison Ford role, as I like him more as Han Solo, but still Indiana Jones. I rewatched all of them back in, I think, sometime in summer last year, and this one still holds up. It looks so cool. It's just the classic adventure movie. The music, it's just such a fun movie, while also having guys' face is melt off, and he gets to fight Nazis. This is such a good movie, and I just love it so much. The Ark of the Covenant is just a cool thing, and Indiana Jones coming in and getting these relics is just so interesting to me, and I, once again, love this movie so much. 1982, I was thinking about checking out Rocky 3, but I decided not to, so my favorite movie will be Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Big surprise, I'm not a Star Trek fan. I watched like an old VHS tape of The Wrath of Khan like years ago, and I thought it was like the best Star Trek movie easily. I've only seen like the first three, The Search for Spock, the first one, whatever it was called, and then The Wrath of Khan. For me, the first one is horrible, it's trash. The Search for Spock is fine, but The Wrath of Khan is pretty solid. I'm not a Star Trek fan. This movie is just like maybe a 6 out of 10 for me. I don't love it. I haven't seen it in years, but it's one of those movies that I haven't seen in a while. But something had to come in for 1981, and I wasn't gonna go and rewatch all the Rocky movies just to get to Rocky 3 and then it not make this list. Like it might not. We'll see. Well, we would have seen, but just Wrath of Khan, I don't really remember much. I enjoyed Khan. I enjoy Kirk and just the ending with Spock. Anyway, just solid enough movie, but I don't really remember it too much. 1983, we have Return of the Jedi, the movie that ended the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, and we have the Endor, we have the second Death Star, we have the Emperor showing up, and bunch of stuff that starts with E. Emperor, Ewoks, Endor. So, solid movie. I feel like it's a bit weird how we go from Jabba's palace and all that stuff to the actual plot. But I really do enjoy both of those things, even though they feel a bit different with their adventures. This movie is where Luke gets like his black suit, his actual powers, and is an actual Jedi master instead of just learning or a Padawan. You get Vader, who he's trying to figure out like his son to beat him, and you just have these great lines of dialogue. The Ewoks are cute, even though it makes no sense that they can beat stormtroopers. It's just a fun movie. The Leia and Han romance is done really well. I just love this entire movie. Star Wars just, once again, means so much to me. I would say this is probably my least favorite movie out of the original trilogy, easily. Like, not super easy. I still love it. It's still a 10 out of 10, but it's not on the high level like Empire and New Hope for me. So I love this movie so much. And just with all the Star Wars movies, these first three, such classics, and they mean so much to me. 1984, a little runner-up here is going to be The Terminator. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, but it was still a solid enough movie. But next, easily, first place, we have Karate Kid. The Karate Kid, the original, and then we had the 2 sequels, and then we had the remake, and now we have Cobra Kai, which is amazing. But the Karate Kid started it all, and it's still such a good movie about Daniel, Mr. Miyagi. You have Johnny as the villain, Kreese, and I appreciate the movie more and more as we get more of Cobra Kai, and it just shows what an amazing movie the Karate Kid was. And I just love that people are celebrating it so much, because I watched all 3 original Karate Kid movies before Cobra Kai existed, and I loved all the 3 Karate Kids. Like, I watched them with my dad, and then we got rid of them, and then we got like a DVD version, and then we watched them, and then we forgot about them for 3 years, and then we rewatched them, and they're such good movies. Well, the first one, and I don't think Cobra Kai or anything else that comes out from this franchise will ever beat the original, because it's just done so well. You get that final kick, the crane kick, it's just done so well. And I hurt my back trying to do the crane kick, and my entire back is bruised because I fell on my tailbone, and that cracked like half my spine. And it's all because of this Karate Kid movie. So I love the Karate Kid movie so much. 1985, we have Back to the Future. Probably easily, I would say, the best time travel movie. The characters are done so well. Marty McFly, Doc Brown, and then just going back in time will always have such a good, it's just such a good idea. Going to see your parents as kids. Like, what if you could see your parents as teenagers? That would be always such an interesting idea to me, and it still is. And it still holds up, this movie. The visual effects might not be perfect, but just this idea, the music, just this movie is like Jaws, a perfect movie. Like, the visual effects, who cares? They look great. And who cares if one thing looks, it's not perfect. Nah, come on. This movie is like Jaws, just one of the most perfect movies ever. I love all the aspects to it, with everything going on with finding his parents, the musical numbers, the mix-up, and him playing in the band, trying to get his parents back together because he messed time up, and just how it ends, having the guy that was a bully to his dad, and then it ends up that his dad stands up to the bully, and his dad is more confident. They live in a better house, things are better for them. It's just such a perfect film. I love all these characters. I love the ending. To be continued. And it's amazing that this movie can still hold up. 1986, we have Aliens. This is easily better than Alien for me. I prefer Alien. There's 2 people, Alien people and Aliens people. This movie has more aliens. It has more guns. It has builds out the world even more. Where the first one was more self-contained, this one is a lot bigger, bringing in the army, bringing in these scientists to this place. You have this little girl, Ripley is just such a great character in this movie, where she has a character arc from the first movie to this one, and you just have all these characters that get saved. You have just little things with, like, the queen xenomorph. It's a queen xenomorph because you have this internal struggle with Ripley, where her daughter grew up and died while she was gone, stuck in space, and she has this new daughter, and that's the queen xenomorph reflection right there. And then you also have just little details, like you have the robot guy, the animatronic, and she has problems trusting him because the last one turned on her. It's just done so well, this movie. It's a perfect movie, just 10 out of 10. James Cameron blew it out of the park with this movie, and I just wish that we could get a bit more from him than Avatar, but this movie is just so well done. All the just effects and everything, all the aliens, xenomorphs, guns look so good, and they're just done so well. This movie is just amazing. 1987, we have Predator. I think this was my first Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And it's just such a guy movie, and with all the muscle handshakes and all the machine guns, the sweat, the cigars, it just seems so gritty. And then you get the Predator, who I have some problems with, just how they just show the outline of him until the final act, basically. And I'm sort of fine with that, but I have some problems, a bit mixed for me, but when you actually see the design in his face, it looks so cool. I love the design when we actually get to see him. You also have these guys who are being taken out one by one, and the Indian girl, and they have to escape Arnold versus the monster in the mud. It's just so classic, so well done, and just still holds up. I once again, love this movie. This was a bunch of these movies, Aliens, Predator, and then the next one here, I all just watched in the past month, and they're suddenly favorite movies of all time. I'm like, how have I not seen these movies before? But Predator still holds up as an amazing movie. 1988, we have Die Hard, the last movie in this little 3-movie thing where I saw the movies Aliens, Predator, and Die Hard in the past month. Die Hard, Bruce Willis, easily his best performance, his best role, so quotable. The villain is just perfect. I have some problems with like the wife and how some things work out. It's not a perfect movie, but I still love this movie. Bruce Willis does such a good job that it has practical effects. It's like a Christmas movie. It's also an action movie. It can be a bit of a comedy, and just little details that are said in like the first lines of dialogue mean so much and are pivotal to the entire plot of the movie later on. And I just love that, everything that's going on, and it has spawned hundreds of rip-offs, which I had seen the rip-offs before I saw this movie. And it's just done so well, this movie. All the little details, the cop, the villain, the like villain's minion, the hostages, this how they're trying to get in there, the limo driver, all these little characters in here that are so interesting and just give a spice to the movie. It's just done so well once again with Die Hard, and I love this movie so much. Once again, it's just amazing movie. 1989, we have Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Well, a runner-up to that would be Back to the Future 2, but Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, what an amazing movie. I like this one even better than the first one, even better than the Raiders of the Lost Ark, just because they give Indiana Jones a better person to bounce off of with his dad, rather than maybe some random person or like the girlfriend. But this one gives you everything with the adventure, the dad, just more comedy. I love that he could just walks up into Hitler and Hitler signs his book. It's just a little detail there. Just him still fighting Nazis and going around doing this stuff, getting this holy grail and the little puzzles that are going on. I just enjoy the movie and everything in it so much. And the addition of the dad is just genius idea right there, because they're father and son, and you get this sense that they actually are father and son, and it doesn't feel like a fake relationship. It feels like an actual relationship between a father and a son. It's done so well once again, and the little details here and there, the just great action with practical effects. Not practical effects, but practical stunt work, and just Harrison Ford, charming as ever in this role, and I think this is probably the most quotable of the Indiana Jones movies, so it's my favorite. I'm going to be interested to see what they do with Indiana Jones 5, but this movie, I don't think it's going to be able to top it. 1990, easily coming in first, is going to be Home Alone. This is probably my favorite Christmas movie. I don't know. I might have to rethink that between Die Hard and Home Alone, but I think Die Hard would be better. But Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin's just best role ever, and probably my favorite movie that features a kid under the age of 10 as the main character. Well, I think he's under the age of 10, but just so good. This kid is so charming. It's a Christmas classic. It's watched so many times. And who cares if it's replayed and you just know everything? It's still such a good movie. And one thing that sort of stood out when I watched it this Christmas, the score is so much better than I remembered. With John Williams once again giving us the amazing scores, along with Star Wars. I didn't even mention him for Star Wars or Back to the Future scores. Scores are just so important in these movies. But the performance by Macaulay Culkin, just the little John Candy thing going on, and just the entire cast. This cast, I remember every single character, where if you showed me a random picture of somebody in the movie, even an extra, I would recognize them because I've seen this movie so many times, and I just love this movie so much. This is the movie that I watched as a kid, probably the most, right under Star Wars, but just one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And it's just I I love it so much. I watched it every single Christmas and still do, and easily one of the best movies with a kid as like the main character. 1991 Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I like this movie so much more than the first one, and you have this thing where the Terminator is actually like a good guy in this movie, and it's done so well with that. The villain, the effects on the villain guy that could just melt and everything are like all these years later, and they still, I don't think you could really top it. It just looks so good. Where the first one of my main problems is the Terminator, when you actually see him, it looks very, very fake. This movie, there's like 1 second where I had to pause it, rewind, and be like, okay, that didn't look perfect, but that was it. Seriously, that was it. So I just love this movie. Once again, same realm as Jaws. This is just another 10 out of 10, like top level movie, like one of my new favorite movies, where just so quotable, so many memorable characters and little things where you see where the characters are gone in a few years, and you have the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, being a good guy, and how it ends the movie with him, how the villain's defeated, I think is just genius how they did it, and how actual this movie feels like it could actually happen. All the effects look awesome. It's a perfect action movie. It's got a bit of time travel in there, and just great performances. It's got everything. It's a bit of comedy, bit of just action, bit of a drama, bit of time travel, and I love all of those things. So this movie is just so top tier for me, and there's so many movies that I've checked out, and this one really did make it to that exact top tier where it would make my top 100 movies of all time. I love this movie so much, and I've said it so many times. You could probably make a counter of how many times I've said I love this movie or it's amazing, but such a just great movie. Not great, perfect. 1992, we have Aladdin. There wasn't a whole bunch that came out in 1992, but Aladdin did come out that year, and Aladdin is still a Disney classic. Our first animated movie on here, and Robin Williams, amazing as Genie. Not his best performance, but I would say his best voice acting performance with Genie. As so quotable, so memorable. Aladdin is just a great character. The songs in here, I Could Show You the World, You Need a Friend Like Me, like these are songs where modern Disney movies, about half the songs I like. This one, there isn't really a bad song. They're all done so well. This movie is just, Jafar is a great villain. It balances comedy while also having darker themes in there, and just such another classic Disney movie. This is Disney Renaissance, I'm pretty sure it was, and just classic Disney. One of my favorite Disney movies of all time, and I'll admit it's not like that top tier. Like this would be one of my top 3 favorite animated movies of all time, but it's still a very, very solid movie. Where once again, extremely memorable. Where I've watched this movie so many times as a kid and now as a teen. So love this movie. 1993, we have Jurassic Park. I just watched this in the past week, so this one still holds up. I'm watching them all in anticipation for the final Jurassic World movie, Dominion. And so maybe you'll watch this in a year, and I'll have 1,000 subscribers, and you'll be like, wow, interesting. But anyway, Jurassic Park still holds up. The visual effects, half of them look excellent. The other half, obviously fake. My dad, that's his problem. He watched this in theaters, he said. Same with Jaws, and he just was like, that doesn't hold up. That looks like a rubber shark. That looks like a fake dinosaur. And I'm like, I could agree with some of the dinosaurs, but not with this shark. So Jurassic Park, I feel like the thing here, other than the fascination with dinosaurs, if you remove dinosaurs, all the characters here are so interesting. When you have the kid, you have the guy that created the dinosaurs, you have Alan Grant, you have Jeff Goldblum's character, you have the lawyer guy, you have just all these characters that are so memorable. You have the guy that's trying to steal from the company, you have even Samuel L. Jackson in all of this. So Jurassic Park, for me, it's not like top tier like Jaws, because some of the effects don't work perfectly, and then some of the other stuff, little nitpicks, but still, I love this movie. This is easily the best movie in the Jurassic Park and World franchises. So, love this movie. Once again, just so good. 1994, we have some runner-ups. First would be Lion King, which, wow, very memorable, but it didn't make first place. Then Pulp Fiction, a movie that I just checked out, and a bit divided on, but I still love this movie. It just doesn't get to the top tier like the number one, and the number one movie of 1994 is going to be Forrest Gump. And Forrest Gump, one of those movies that it's not a movie that you watch all the time because you think it's just a fun movie, but it also could get extremely emotional and dramatic, and it just, the character arcs, Lieutenant Dan and Forrest and Jenny, I don't know, I forgot how to say her name, but all these little Forrest Gump adventures are done just so well. I love this movie. It's got this sense of, it's really in on it with the little cameos by some people, some real world people, and the effects look so well. Even this was a 90s movie. Everything looks so good. Like, you can't tell when Lieutenant Dan doesn't really have legs, and you know what they must have done and how hard that must have been, and with so much of this stuff, and Forrest narrating. Easily my favorite Tom Hanks movie, his best performance in my opinion. I just love this movie so much, with the music too. Alan Silvestri. Yeah, 'cause I'm having a hard time pronouncing some composers and actors' names today, but just the score, the performances, and just the feel of naivety, while also having comedy in there. It just works so well. 1995, our runner-up is going to be Toy Story, one of the best Pixar movies, but number one is going to be Braveheart. My favorite Mel Gibson performance and my favorite Mel Gibson movie. This movie just has that feel of war and battle. My favorite like battle/war movie. It just, yes, it gets you so pumped. How it ends is so good. Like, I like a movie that ends either on like a somber note or just on a high note. Like, yes, I don't like those movies where it just becomes so generic and it's always like, okay, we're gonna end on a positive note. Like, I'm watching through all the Harry Potter movies and they try to end all on positive notes for the first 5 movies, but this movie ends on just the darker but also pumped up note where freedom, and it just, yes, it gets you pumping your fists and moving, where you have this romance in there while also having amazing just action. I love this movie so much. My dad showed it to me, like, I think maybe 2 years ago. It might have been last year, sometime in the past 2 years, but what an amazing movie that just can give you the romance and it doesn't feel cheesy or cheated, or it just doesn't seem to work, but it could also give you the war and the actual, you could understand what they're fighting for. 1996, we have Scream. This is the first like R-rated horror movie that I checked out, and it is currently my favorite horror movie of all time, and I don't think anything's gonna beat it. We'll see, but Scream is just, it comments on the genre while also having so much fun with you. It's a whodunit, and it also has just great kills, great performances. This movie, I watched all the Scream movies in January to watch the new one, and this was easily my favorite. I just loved all the characters in here are so memorable and so good. The villain, Ghostface, just, when I think of villains, Michael Myers is just a white mask. Freddy is a burned guy. Jason's got like a hockey mask, but Ghostface has just such an interesting design for a face and a character, and it looks so cool in this movie, and it's done so well with that amazing horrifying intro, and also that just the movie whodunit and how it ends. Just this is my favorite slasher movie, favorite horror movie. We'll see if something beats it, but I doubt it. 1997, we have another James Cameron movie, Titanic. This movie that I checked out for my highest grossing movies list, and wow, it's 3 hours long, but it is some 3 very good hours where you have this romance going on, where you spend the first half an hour in actual present day, and it doesn't matter. This movie is still so good because the Titanic isn't even really the main focus, it's the characters, and sometimes you want to focus on the actual battle, the event, the war. Sometimes you want to focus on the characters, and this romance works so well. Probably the most classic romance movie. Well, not classic, but one of my favorite romance movies. I usually say Pride and Prejudice is my favorite, but this one, I think it would be added on the drama or historical wow romance. So I don't know if it goes straight romance movie, but if we're going just straight romance movies, I think Titanic would probably win for me. I enjoy the romance section while there also be some just great, just little details like the violin guys. They know they're gonna die, and so they keep playing because it's their passion. And you see how different people react to the ship going down. Some people that are running to get into the rowboat, some people that don't care, and some people that are just let's die doing what we love. And such a powerful movie. And just I'm watching all these James Cameron movies in the past 6 months, and it's crazy to me. Terminator got an honorable mention. Terminator 2 made it on the list. Aliens made it on the list. Titanic made it on the list. And we'll see if Avatar makes it on the list. But what an amazing director. What amazing filmography. 1998, Prince of Egypt. A movie that I once again watched a bunch as a kid. I had an old VHS tape of it. And I'm a Christian, so the biblical stuff here, actually, I was taught it in church and stuff. So when you actually see it on screen and it's done so powerfully, I love it. It's one of the best DreamWorks movies. I think it would make top 5. I think I did my DreamWorks tier list and it made top 5. But very powerful movie, while also the musical numbers work so well. The 2D animation, imagine if this was in 3D, it would not have the same vibe, not the same feel. And you have characters in this thing where you have to think about it. You don't usually think when you think Moses, oh yeah, I went back to Pharaoh and he's like, let my people go. No, they were brothers. This guy, he was raised next to this kid. They grew up together. And you actually have the human emotion put into this story that feels so distant from us because we've heard it so many times. And so it's another animated film that it's sort of frustrating because a bunch of animated films that are better, in my opinion, than Lion King, Aladdin, and Prince of Egypt get honorable mentions because there were a bunch of amazing movies that came out this year, but Prince of Egypt is still a very, very solid movie. 1999, right before the turn of the century, our runner-up is actually The Matrix. I love The Matrix, but it's a maybe 9 out of 10 movie, maybe 8.5. I need to rewatch it, but it's not as good as people say. But you know what's even better than people say? Fight Club. I just checked out this movie, and this movie is shot up into my top 100 to 50 favorite movies of all time. Fight Club, just the twist, the performances, the style here, it's amazing. I love Fight Club. I saw this once at a garage sale. I'm like, should I get that? And I asked, hey, maybe we could get this. And I'm like, you know what? Nah. I should have picked that up and bought it. I don't care if it's $100. This movie is so well done. It is dripping with style, and just performances also have their own unique style. And it captures this phase of a bunch of men from that time period. It just works so well, and you see all this happening and how it ends and how it begins and how the first half hour basic, and the narration and just the name of the guy, our main character, Brad Bird's character, is just the narrator. And it's just this movie has probably my favorite twist that I've seen in any other movie, even better than Darth Vader, because that had sort of been spoiled for me. So this movie is so good. It was so better than I thought it would be, and I don't know if it's just me, if I love this movie so much more than I thought I would, or this movie is just actually not seen enough. This is the movie that surprised me the most, where I'm like, should I even check it out? The Matrix is pretty good, and I'm so glad that I checked it out. 2000, the turn of the century. The runner-up is going to be The Emperor's New Groove. I think this is my favorite Disney movie, maybe, but I just love The Emperor's New Groove. Such an amazing movie. So funny. But actual favorite movie of that year is going to be Unbreakable. Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson. Funny story, I watched this in the past 4 weeks, and I watched it, and then the twist changed everything. I just watched it alone because none of my family members wanted to check it out. They're like, what? Slower action movie? I don't care. And then the twist happened, and it blew my mind. And so the next night, I just showed it to my entire family, like, hey, you got to check this movie out. It's slower, but it's a superhero movie that doesn't seem like a superhero movie. It has these performances that don't seem like they should be in a superhero movie. They seem like they should be in a drama, because this movie seems like a drama when it's actually a superhero movie. And it's done so well. It was one of those movies that it doesn't use effects really at all. It uses just actual human stuff. Like, he lifts up extra weight. That feels like a very natural thing. And then you get the twist by M. Night Shyamalan, and a bunch of people say this is his best movie. This is the only movie I've seen from him currently. I haven't seen The Sixth Sense, so this is my favorite movie from M. Night Shyamalan currently. 2001, we have a bunch of honorable mentions. First one is going to be The Royal Tenenbaums. I checked this movie out. My first Wes Anderson movie, and it is, once again, dripping with style. But still, the more I thought about it, the more it sort of just, I thought it might beat the number one, but no, not exactly. And then next we have Atlantis, The Lost Empire, a movie that the plot is pretty basic, but the characters and the world and the animation are so much better than they should be. And also, very, very close runner-up is going to be Shrek. I love Shrek, but unfortunately, coming in first place instead of Shrek is going to be The Fellowship of the Ring, the first Lord of the Ring movies. And the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, once again, like Star Wars, one of those almost, I would say, perfect trilogies that I love. This movie sets everything up. We're introduced. The score for these movies, I didn't mention it really in Star Wars, but the score for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, perfect. My two favorite scores right there. Star Wars and Fellowship of the Ring. No, not Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings. And I just love both of those scores so much. The characters here are all memorable. Just Sam, Gandalf, Aragorn. I've always been troubled just pronouncing Aragorn's name. Frodo, just Bilbo, everybody here, and you actually see these character arcs in this world that is just given so much life, and the effects look so good. Like, this was 2001. If you think like SpiderMan, the movie that came out next in 2002, the effects in that, I've always been like, yeah, the effects aren't perfect. They don't look super good. And then you look at Fellowship of the Ring, you're like, the Fellowship of the Ring came out the same, like, the year before that? It's crazy to me. And so this world is given so much life and looks so good. Just, I love how it begins. I love how it ends. I love just the movie. It's so, so well done. And it's amazing. It's amazing to me. 2002, our first runner-up is going to be The Bourne Identity, the first of the Bourne franchise, and my second favorite, I like Supremacy better, but the first one is still a great action movie. And then another runner-up is going to be Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Didn't make first place. We might have had a threefer where all 3 years were Lord of the Rings, but for me, my favorite movie of 2002 is Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, which I checked it out for my Spider-Man ranking, and it is still such an amazing movie. The thing is, the effects don't look perfect, like when you have him running from building to building, but still, Green Goblin, other than the suit looking a bit cheesy and some of the effects being cheesy, is easily the best Spider-Man villain for me. I don't care what you say, he's perfect. Willem Dafoe gives him so much life and his perfect performance right there. Tobey Maguire is probably my favorite Spider-Man. He's just, I think he was my second Spider-Man that I saw, and he's just done so well because he's the first one, he's the original, and it feels like Peter Parker, where Andrew Garfield, he felt a bit too cool, and then Tom Holland felt, I don't know, just something was a bit wrong with Tom Holland, but Tobey Maguire, perfect Spider-Man. This movie, I was introduced to it, like, seriously, only 2 years ago, and I've watched it so many more times than I think I would have. 2003, we have a few runner-ups. First one's Elf. Amazing Will Ferrell movie. Probably my favorite one that I've seen currently. I haven't seen like Talladega Nights or Step Brothers yet, but maybe in the future. And then our other runner-up is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. But coming in first place easily is going to be Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. This is how you do the third film in a trilogy. It takes everything and it just gives you the payoff. And that just, when you have the payoff to it, it just boosts it up even more. This is my favorite Middle-earth movie. I haven't seen the second and third Hobbit movies, but all the individual characters get their own payoff, and it just culminates in this epic battle that one of the best ending of the trilogy battles that I could think of immediately, where it just gets everything and pays it off. You get some epic just stuff going on. You have Mordor and how it ends. I love how it ends with Frodo, Sam, and Gollum being incorporated, where he actually saves the day in his own way. And even the final payoff with Bilbo, seeing what happens to him, and Aragorn being the king and returning, just so well done. I love all these Lord of the Rings movies, and they each find their own way to have a different, not exact style, but a different feel to them maybe, where if you watch them all at the same time, they flow coherent, but they each have their little ending, and this movie has its perfect ending. And then for 2004, our runner-ups are going to be The Incredibles, an amazing Pixar movie, and also Shrek 2, even better than the first one. But 2004, speaking of movies that are better than the first one, Spider-Man 2. In my Spider-Man ranking, I had Spider-Man No Way Home as my favorite, but after time, it sort of moved down, and I've decided Spider-Man 2 is actually my favorite Spider-Man movie, where it just takes everything to the next level, and where you have MJ actually finding out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. You have Doc Ock, not exactly a better villain, but a bit less crazy one, if I could say that. And then you just get this really cool vibe from Sam Raimi with a bit of horror aspects in there, and just the music and how he decides not to become Spider-Man for a while. It's so well done. The train sequence is easily the best scene in basically any Spider-Man movie, up there with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, The Leap of Faith, and also Spider-Man No Way Home. Just everybody meeting each other and the final battle there, but just an amazing ending to just MJ figuring out that Peter is Spider-Man, and just having that, it just works so well, where Spider-Man 3 ends on a bit of a downer. This movie, once again, ends on the high note, and I just, as I've said many times, I love that when a movie does that. Our runner-up for 2005 is going to be Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan, amazing movie that kicks off the Dark Knight trilogy. I love this movie so much, but coming in first place for 2005 is going to be Revenge of the Sith. Another Star Wars movie that I absolutely love. This is my favorite of the prequel series easily, and it just culminates everything that's been set up in this epic end thing that just, it has the most action out of all the Star Wars movies. It has so many cool sequences, and it just looks so epic, where you have Yoda versus Palpatine, and then Anakin versus Obi-Wan going on at the same time. You have Obi-Wan versus Grievous, and then you also have the emotional thing with, you have Anakin turning into Vader finally, and killing Padme and Obi-Wan having to accept that he has to kill his best friend, and all this going on. And I just love this movie so much, where it looks so epic, the CG so top-notch. This is just the movie that sort of brought Star Wars back, I would say. Not where Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, pretty mediocre for Star Wars movies. I still really enjoy them, but I accept they're not good movies. They're good movies to me, but a bunch of people really don't like them. And then Revenge of the Sith is the movie that's an actually amazing movie. 2006, our runner-up is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. This is just a really fun movie, and it's more fun. It's pretty stupid, but coming in first place for 2006 is going to be Rocky Balboa. The Rocky movie, that's Rocky 6. Who would have thought? Rocky 6 makes it on the list. But just Rocky Balboa, the final stand for Rocky, where he does his final fight. He makes like a comeback, and I just love this movie. It's got this sort of slower feel where everybody that he knows is dead, and so he's just doing what he knows to do best, boxing, for one final time before he becomes a mentor in the Creed movies. And this is just a very emotional movie, probably one of the most emotional of the entire franchise. Sylvester Stallone, as always, gives an amazing performance, and then just the end battle, it gets that same hype that you got from the first Rocky movie, and I just love it for that. Admittedly, 2006 wasn't the greatest year for movies, but I still just... Rocky Balboa, it tugs at the heartstrings when you've spent 5 movies with his character, and then you get to Rocky Balboa, and just... he's trying to connect with his son. He's got his restaurant named Adrian, and he doesn't really know what to do, and so he decides to fight again. And so just, it really is just a great comeback for the Rocky franchise, and I'm glad it came out, because if it hadn't come out, then we probably wouldn't have the Creed movies, which next one coming out December, and I think there hasn't really been that really bad Rocky movie yet. 2007, we have Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, a movie that I just watched like 3 or 4 days ago, and admittedly isn't as good as I remember it being. It has a few flaws, but it's still a very solid movie. So far in my watch along for the Harry Potter movies, it's my favorite. I haven't gone to Deathly Hallows Part 2 yet, so we'll see, but just this movie gives Harry Potter the lead role, the leadership role, where he's actually teaching these kids. You also get the great addition of Luna Lovegood and Dolores Umbridge, and Ron isn't as jerky and a douchebag like he is in the later movies, and then Hermione is also not as sour as she gets in later movies also, so it just is that nice movie before everything gets super dark. It's still dark. You still have the sense that Voldemort's out there. You see him in the end battle. You get the greatest end battle in all the Harry Potter movies up to this. Well, I would say yes, easily. Greatest end battle, just battle. And then so far, I haven't seen Deathly Hallows Part 2 yet in this timeline, but so far it has the best emotional battle where we actually get to see Harry and his struggle with Voldemort getting into his brain. Such a good movie. It still holds up, and once again, admittedly, 2006, not like amazing years for movies, but there still was a few solid ones. 2008, we have The Dark Knight, my favorite movie of all time currently. You get Heath Ledger's legendary performance as the Joker. Christian Bale does, once again, an amazing job as Batman and Bruce Wayne, balancing both of them perfectly. You get Two-Face, Harvey Dent, just so good in this movie. Nobody really talks about him, but he's really, really good. The death of Rachel, and then Two-Face coming out. Joker in this movie is just so good, and I know people are really frustrated, like, why are they still doing Joker? Like, Joker 2 is coming out, and you have the Suicide Joker that was in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now I have the Joker and the Batman. I feel like if you could get a Joker right, then it makes it to the top of my list usually. And this Joker is done definitely right. This Joker's just it's the standout of the movie. And if you didn't have him as the villain, easily it wouldn't be as good. That he's got a bunch of standout things, but Batman is still amazing in this movie. There's so much to talk about, and I've talked about it so many times, where just actually blowing up a hospital, the great looking like effects that they did, where I don't think they really did much effects, but whenever they do them, they do look great. The actual stunt work is, once again, really good. The just action, and it ends on one of the highest point of a movie ever, in my opinion. So Dark Knight is my favorite movie of all time. There's no higher thing that you could get than that. 2009 Avatar, another James Cameron movie. Titanic, Terminator gets a mention, Aliens makes it, Terminator 2 makes it, and then Avatar makes it. James Cameron is top 3 directors for me, but Avatar is admittedly solid movie, like 9 out of 10, 8.5, somewhere in there, but 2009, once again, was not that amazing of a year for movies. Avatar is still easily the best. The effects still hold up and look amazing. Like, I just watched Multi-Universe of Madness. I took a break in the middle of filming this, and they showed the trailer for Avatar 2, and the VFX, the visual effects look way better, but the Avatar movie still has amazing visual effects. Pandora is such an interesting world, and even though the plot's generic, like, think about The Dark Knight. It's got the Joker doing crazy stuff, Batman trying to stop him. You have just a bunch of movies that have simpler plots, and people forgive them for amazing performances, amazing things. This one, it's Pandora, it's the action, it's the VFX, and not exactly the characters, but just the main character, for me, just sort of doesn't exactly steal the show with an Oscar-worthy performance, but does a really good job. And so this movie, a bunch of people really just are like, Avatar is the worst. Second one isn't even going to make top 1,000 highest grossing movies. It's not going to make any money. I don't think that matters. For me, Avatar is still a really good movie, and I bet the sequel will be just as good. I'm thinking it's going to be better. 2010, this is the hardest one for me in all of these, because not exactly like Dark Knight level, but we have two movies that are so equally matched for me. We have The Social Network, which I just watched. Andrew Garfield, just all the performances are amazing in this movie, and I love the style. I love David Fincher's style. And Inception, my second favorite Christopher Nolan movie that just bends your mind. And I've watched both of these movies in the past month, and I'm going to go Inception. Social Network is an amazing movie. One day it might come above Inception. I had it originally above Inception, but just Inception just means so much to me and has such a good plot, twist, characters, action scene, dream stuff, heist stuff. It has so much there, where The Social Network is like the best movie about true life story about something being created, basically, that I could think of off of the top of my head. And then you have Inception, which you also have this thing. You have David Fincher, who did Fight Club, who made this list, and then you have Christopher Nolan, who did The Dark Knight, who made this list. Who's gonna win? And just Inception beats it for me because it has so much. I watched it past 2 weeks. I'd say like within the past week and a half, and still, what an amazing movie! It just. The plot, I watched it once, it blew my mind. I rewatched it, I'm like, this isn't as good as I remember. And I put Social Network above it, and then I rewatched it because I went to a friend's house and I had to introduce him to it. And we stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning just watching it, and his little brother was there. Well, not his little brother, he's like 2 years younger than him, but he was going to go to bed, and then he's like, you just look at the screen, and he was drawn, and we watched the entire movie together, and it, once again, ends on the perfect note for Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan doesn't always land the ship, but when he does, it's a masterpiece. So, Inception is an amazing movie. 2011, our runner-up here is going to be Scream 4. I didn't immediately think of this, but Scream 4 is like an amazing movie in the Scream franchise. It's up there with the original for me. They're like going neck and neck. The original is a lot better, but just a bit better. But Scream 4 is an amazing movie. 2011, the actual number one is going to be Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It takes everything in the entire Harry Potter film series and culminates it in one of the greatest endings to a franchise. Well, not exactly endings to the entire franchise, but to this timeline in the franchise ever. Like, even classics like Star Wars, Return of the Jedi is known as one of the worst, well, the worst out of the three. But I would say, if you think about it, Lord of the Rings probably does have the greatest ending to an entire part of the franchise. But Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, you get Voldemort versus Harry. You get so much in here where I don't usually think. I got a bit mixed up. You get them breaking into the bank. You get some comedy in here. You get the yes moments. You get the stand up and see and cheer like, yeah, you get him. And then you have the emotional moments. You have the amazing ending, my favorite ending to any Harry Potter movie, where you see them let their kids go away. You get to see everybody who survived and where they went. Everybody gets their character arc. Everybody gets not exactly their perfect happily ever after, but they get their little character arc, their little, hey, look at that. Neville actually became the leader of Hogwarts. Draco actually turned out good. Harry actually married Ginny. Ron and Hermione actually are married. And just that, for me, is what pushes this movie above Scream 4 and just pushes this movie to currently my favorite Harry Potter movie. We'll see. That might change, but I think it is still going to be it. Where it's just such an amazing ending to a franchise. And it might have a few problems, but I could accept them because it's just such an amazing movie. Talking about another movie that just teamed up everything. 2012, we have the Avengers taking this whole franchise that we had, phase 1 of the MCU, and culminating it in the MCU movie that just everybody was like, wow, they did it, because this had never been done before, where you had a bunch of characters from different movies and different well, it seemed like different franchises, but different movies, and then they all come together in this one movie that hadn't really been done before, where each character has a backstory. You know each character, and you're rooting for each character, usually. There's some that you're not usually rooting for, and you get to see them all unite and fight against Loki. The ending hour of this is just so fun it's generic, because you have space alien robots versus superheroes. It's very basic. There's no super complications like they had in Avengers Age of Ultron, where you have a meteor crashing into the world, or Thanos' entire army comes, or everybody dies at the end. No. It's very basic, but you could do that with a movie like this and just have a ton of fun. Joss Whedon, he's been getting a lot of just angry tweets and stuff for him, ruining Justice League, and I think his style in the Avengers, this movie, works so well. 2013, another superhero movie, Man of Steel, the Superman movie that made me love Superman. This was my first actual live action Superman movie. I saw a lot of the old 60s or whatever little TV spot, no, not TV spots, but maybe episodes to the show, and I thought, that's cool, Superman. But this movie, once again, Zack Snyder, a bit divisive right now, where Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder, he just gave me the Superman movie that I love so much. And I haven't even seen the first 4 Superman movies or whatever. And this movie is always going to be my favorite Superman movie. Probably. Something might beat it. There's potential. But just Henry Cavill as Superman, just amazing casting right there. I love just all Amy Adams. No, I don't think Amy Adams, I think, does play Lois in this Superman thing, and then just the Zod as the villain, best DCEU villain yet. Just it gets everything right with all this stuff. It's origin story. It could give you the emotion. It could give you that just thematic value. And it could also give you a bit of comedy. So just I watched one day, I watched Man of Steel, and then we watched The Avengers. The Avengers is easily better for me because it's a lot more fun, but Man of Steel is just such a thematic and well done movie. 2014, our runner-up here is going to be Captain America the Winter Soldier, the movie that really just took the spy political thriller thing and put it in the MCU, and it does such an amazing job. These two movies right here are neck or neck, but number one is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Once again, 2014 was an amazing year for movies. You had the Lego movie, you had John Wick, you had all these different movies, but Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be my favorite. This movie holds such a special place in my heart. Me and my sister, we sat down, we're like, hey, I got to watch through all the Marvel movies. What do you want to watch? Over like 50 to 70 movies there, and they're like, let's watch Guardians of the Galaxy. So like 2 months ago, we checked out Guardians of the Galaxy again, and it still holds up. It's just the characters, the style. I love James Gunn's just style when he does it in these superhero movies with the Suicide Squad, with Peacemaker, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2, and hopefully 3. But just such an amazing movie where it took this family, these different characters, and they brought them together and made a family. It could be so emotional. It could be so epic. It could look so cool. And it's one of those movies that's like the number one movie where if I go to a friend's house, I'm like, let's watch Guardians of the Galaxy. The cast here, perfect for each other. Just Yondu, you don't even think about it, but in this movie, he's great. Everything in this movie is so good. And even people don't like Ronan. I like Ronan in this movie. He's tries to be epic, but he's this epic villain in this very, very funny movie. So he sort of gets made fun of a bunch, and that just puts a smile on my face. 2015, the first big blockbuster that I saw in theaters, The Force Awakens. Once again, coming back to Star Wars, every single trilogy of Star Wars movies has that one that at least one or two, if we're talking about the originals, or maybe three for the originals, that is really good and makes it on this list. Prequels is Revenge of the Sith, The End. And for the sequels, it's the first one, The Force Awakens. People are really soured on this movie because they're like, hey, yeah, everything doesn't work because of Rey and where that all gets. I understand you. You could be really let down by Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, or maybe just Rise of Skywalker, or maybe both. Or maybe just Last Jedi, but I don't know if anybody's just let down by Last Jedi and liked Rise of Skywalker, but this movie is always going to have the nostalgia where I watched the movie and I sat in that theater and I saw stormtroopers on a giant screen. I saw Kylo Ren. I saw these new characters. I saw the old characters, and my heart sped up, and I was just like, wow. Another movie that made me love movies. Star Wars, once again, means so much to me. And this was during my phase between like 2012 and 2017 where I was absolute Star Wars. So this movie just means so much to me in that it still looks amazing. It's very slick. And I love everything. Just not everything, but how this movie plays. Kylo Ren, the mythology with the new characters and the old characters. It works so well. Even though that the other two sequels don't work. For 2016, I think our runner-up is going to be Rogue One this time. I will rewatch one of the other movies in my top three. My top three are basically interchangeable, but it was Captain America Civil War, Rogue One, and Deadpool. But coming in first is going to be Deadpool just because I rewatched it, and I think at least for now, I'm putting it above Rogue One. Like, they could switch Deadpool, Rogue One, Rogue One. Rogue One is a great action movie when it gets into the action, but it sort of fails on the characters. Deadpool absolutely makes it on the characters, but has some not so perfect jokes. But talking about Deadpool, I rewatched it for my X-Men ranking, which I watched 13 movies and it got like 20 views. But Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. I'm sorry, he's perfect for the role. He embodies his character perfectly. The movie goes out of order, and I feel like it's just another fun thing that works with Deadpool. The humor here, I think, In the second one, the humor is even worse, but in the first one, the humor is still enough. It's fresh enough. It's a bit confusing at time when you have swapping around with how it's out of order, but well, it doesn't really matter to me. I love the end battle. It's just I had the story behind, they were supposed to bring these guns, and then they didn't have enough money in the budget to make the gun effects, so they just had them forget the guns. So it's just so funny to me, just that behind the scenes set detail. So this movie is always gonna have a special place in my heart. It's like the first very hard R movie that I saw, and it just blew my mind, and I still love it to this day. 2017 was absolutely amazing year for movies. You had, of course, Thor Ragnarok. You had Chris Evans and McKenna Grace in Gifted, which my first introduction to McKenna Grace, and she was amazing in this. One of my favorite slasher, PG-13 slasher movies, Happy Death Day, where you have a time loop and slasher movie, and I just love that. And then, of course, Logan, which the best X-Men movie. But coming in, beating all those amazing movies, is this random movie called The Disaster Artist. Now, this is based off of a book, which is based off of a movie that was so horrible. It was called The Room, and it's known as the worst movie of all time. I've not seen The Room, and so this is like a behind-the-scenes set where you have these two guys, they're friends, and one of them is like, hey, let's make a movie. And so they decide to make a movie, and they're best friends out of this, and they go through all the crazy stuff with movies and fame and all that, and they just make the movie, and it's just hilarious because this one guy who we don't even know how he gets his money. He's a real life guy. These two guys are real, and nobody knows how he got the money to make the movie because it cost millions, and he's not a millionaire or anything. He might be now, I don't know, but he just got the money, and they started making this movie, and just how it ends. It's a movie about friendship, and it just blew my mind how much I actually loved this movie, where it just embodies friendship and also has it in the movie industry, and it's just such a weird and funny and just heartfelt movie at the end of the day that I just love so much, where it just gets everything right with everything that it does. It beats Thor Ragnarok, it beats Logan, it beats Gifted, it beats all those movies. It's just crazy to me, this random movie. And so I would recommend it. It's a very not a different sort of humor, but I think it will resonate with a lot of people, and I had no idea anything about it. Nobody really talks about it, and then I checked it out, and it was amazing. 2018, hard. It's going to be very hard, but our runner-up is going to be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, possibly my favorite animated film of all time. I love the animation style, all the characters, just the entire soundtrack just works so well for me. I love listening to What's Up Danger and I'm Not Scared of the Dark and Sunflower. Just everything is so good in this movie, but favorite movie 2018 is going to be Avengers Infinity War. This was my first MCU movie, believe it or not. Of all the movies to start it with, you have to start it with the one that has the cliffhanger. If I watch Avengers Endgame, it would probably be even more confusing, but this movie is a bit confusing by itself when you haven't seen any other MCU movies. But it just looks amazing. How it ends still holds up. It gets all the characters like Avengers and then doubles down with getting everybody in except for Hawkeye and Ant-Man for some reason. But, well. So, I always like to make the joke, the one movie that Hawkeye isn't there in the Avengers movies, they all lose. So, keep Hawkeye around, Avengers. But this movie is just... Thanos is amazing as a villain. It's the culmination of all these characters and all this stuff in this one movie, and they did it. I just feel like huh, how did I not see this in theaters? But well, and just how it ends with Thanos on the farm, so well done. All the characters, it's just so epic, and for me it's the best MCU movie. And then for 2019, another amazing year for movies. Our few runner-ups here are going to be Ford v Ferrari, where you have Matt Damon and Christian Bale. This movie came out of nowhere, and it became one of my favorite movies of the year, going on par with these other amazing movies. And so Ford v Ferrari is definitely just such a good movie. Avengers Endgame, of course. I don't love it as much as some people. Some people, this is their favorite MCU movie. I'm not 100% there. I got a few problems, but still, great ending to the entire, MCU. Knives Out. I like this better than Avengers Endgame. This is the greatest mystery movie of all time. My sisters were just watching it last night. I'm like, this is such a good movie. It's all the characters are amazing, but easily coming in first place is gonna be Joker. You watch my intro every single time. We got some stuff from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then you have a little thing with Joker every single time. So yeah, Joker is amazing. Joaquin Phoenix gives easily just such a good performance, where Heath Ledger versus Joaquin Phoenix is just so hard for me. I will never be able to decide who is better. They're so absolutely legendary in their movies, and how it plays, how it ends, how it's all just one Joker movie. I hope they don't mess this entire film up with a sequel, which is gonna be coming out, believe it or not. But this movie, Arthur's journey from being a nice guy that has this condition with laughing, and then I guess he has a bit of a mental condition because stuff gets weird. This movie is so spectacular, stunning, and interesting that it beats seriously my favorite mystery movie of all time, my second favorite MCU movie of all time, and that's just once again crazy to me. This superhero movie about probably my favorite super villain of all time, one of my favorite villains of all time, and it just resonates and it sticks to the landing. It's amazing. So such an amazing movie. 2020, I sort of switched it up. It's harder to come up with a number one because not a whole bunch of amazing movies came out 2020, and then I haven't watched a bunch of them in a while. Runner-up is going to be Love and Monsters. Really underrated, but I still have not felt the need to rewatch it. Then we have Birds of Prey, my original number one, but after time I've sort of gone, hey, there's a few things right there and there that didn't 100% make it for me. Still solid enough movie. They're all on the same level, Birds of Prey and this next one, but favorite movie 2020 is going to be Palm Springs. This is once again a time loop movie, but it's a romance. You also have J.K. Simmons in there. You have this great romance where they're stuck in time, and the girl is starting to figure out things. I just watched it, I'd say 3 to 4 months ago, probably 4 months ago, and really fun movie. I didn't immediately love it, but I've sort of warmed up to it more. I still don't absolutely love it. It's got a few problems. It's a shorter movie. It's Hulu original, so good job, Hulu, but, there wasn't a whole bunch of good movies that came out 2020. This is my favorite, and another random movie that came out that is amazing. And I always love it when this random movie where the only person that I know in the cast is J.K. Simmons, and it's just a time loop romance movie, is my favorite movie 2020. That is when you got an interesting movie watching career. 2021, my runner-up is going to be Dune. I love Dune. I've rewatched it quite a few times since the theaters, and it still holds up every single time. Masterpiece. Another masterpiece, Zack Snyder's Justice League. A bunch of people didn't like it. For me, it's a masterpiece, and I love every little bit of it. But number one is going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. I bought it and rewatched it. I did overhype it. I'm sorry. It's not the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time. That would still be Spider-Man 2, but it's the second best Spider-Man movie of all time, where it culminates the entire, everything Spider-Man except for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and puts it in this one movie, and they paid off so well. So we had 3 Spider-Man movies on here. Wow, I love Spider-Man. He's probably movie-wise, he's my favorite superhero. But just in general, I like Batman more. So it's always that sort of basically interchangeable thing. But getting to 2022, just gonna go through here. runner-up that I actually think is a very solid movie that I would recommend. The Outfit. This very well done movie. It's not exactly for everybody, but I think some people will really enjoy this movie. And then I did see Multi-Universe of Madness. It's not 100% there for me, but coming in first place still is going to be The Batman. This was my most anticipated film of the year. It was a bit disappointing. I've sort of evened out. I need to rewatch it once again still, but it's still at the 8.5 range for me, not 100% a 9. And performances here, pretty good. I enjoy some of the villains. They're a bit mixed for me, but Batman done really well. I love the darker tone. Gotham feels so gritty, and this is just solid Batman movie. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. It's not in like Zack Snyder's Justice League level for me, or not on the same level as The Dark Knight, not even close, but it was still an enjoyable movie, solid enough superhero movie. So those are my favorite movies from each year from the past 50 years. This was an incredibly long video to edit, to record. I've been recording for an extremely long time. This took 2 days to record, and then the editing by itself took about a week, probably more because I haven't finished editing it all. So thank you so much everybody who watched this entire video and that just supports me. This is gonna be like one of my biggest videos of the entire year because it took so long to prepare. So please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications. So just thank you everybody for watching this. I love you all. Braden out.